Welcome to the Play Action Podcast. Great to be with you as we head into the divisional rounds of the playoffs. Dave Farrell alongside Joe Fortenbaugh and Matt Brown. Gentlemen, last week I unfortunately wasn't here, and you guys just totally messed things up.
We got used to you not being around.
Oh,
here.
really?
So we got used to you not being around here. Everything was going.
Sound like my ex-wife.
Everything was going swimmingly. No, look, Joe. Looking back on how this past weekend went, I mean, we nailed a couple of things. Fortunately, we rallied on Sunday. We're able to salvage the week, but on Saturday, you look back at that Chiefs game, and we were both, pretty heavily on the Chiefs. And if you look at that, in retrospect, I don't feel terrible about that bet. I mean, listen, if Chiefs would have just stuck to the game plan, and maybe this is something we have to talk about, future, certainly looking into next season is looking beyond the field of play and whether we actually trust these coaches to do what we think that they should do to win these football games. Because, we look back on this and you see 11 carries next to Kareem Hunt's name again, whenever there was a 4-game losing streak for the Chiefs. We also were seeing like 8, 9, 10 carries a game for Kareem Hunt. And here we are yet again. It repeated the process, and, we lose that bet. But, given what we knew going into the game, do you feel really terrible about making that play?
Not necessarily. I mean, we've seen Andy Reid do this before. That's the one thing I've been kicking myself about since that game, thinking to myself, I've seen Andy Reid do this in the playoffs going back to Philly. I saw him do it in Indianapolis with the Chiefs just a few years back. Why did I believe this would be anything different? I think I got caught up in the fact that I overlooked Tennessee, and I still don't think that's a problem. Tennessee is not that good of a football team. They even were leaking internally that they were going to probably part ways with head coach Mike Mularkey.
Right before the game.
He falls ass backwards into this win, and now if you're Tennessee, you're like, damn, we can't fire this guy. He just won a playoff game. I will say this. In the ongoing battle between you and me over trends, which ones apply, which ones don't, I do find it interesting that over the last 6 years now, unders in the wild card round are like 18-5-1. Unders were 3-1 this past weekend prior to the Saints game. All three had hit. The unders hit big time in the first round. So moving forward in the next year, just something to file away in the back of your mind. Maybe we overvalued these teams in terms of scoring early in the playoffs, and as a result, they come out a little tight, and maybe there's an opportunity down the road to make some money on these unders.
Yeah, and Dave, just kind of continuing with that coach trend. I was real high on the under last week in that Saints-Panthers game. And then you look at it, and then you've got a guy like Sean Payton who is, an offensive genius. And he looked at the situation, and he understood that he was going to be able to exploit this team through the air. And so a team that basically for the last month and a half of the NFL season had relied on their two workhorse backs came out, and Drew Brees threw for 376 yards. It was just, and I should have, these are things that we'll pick up on and certainly continue to look at a little bit more closely. But, Sean Payton's the type of coach, unlike an Andy Reid. Sean Payton is the type of coach who can look at a team and go, that's where I'm going to take care of that team. That's how I'm going to get it done. And that's what they did this week. And, but again, it was overall a decent weekend.
We handicapped Bortles correctly.
We did Bortles. Blake Bortles is not a good quarterback. Breaking news. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you look at the Carolina Panthers defense, for example, Matt, and you go, look, they're a good defense overall, but against the run, they're really strong. Against the pass, maybe not so much. A different bag of tricks, maybe, for the New Orleans Saints this week, going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, we'll get to that a little bit later. Fairly fun games, one particularly lopsided. We'll get to Tennessee and New England in just a moment, but this one has tongues wagging for sure. Atlanta on the road at Philadelphia. And again, this whole program is brought to you by SBRodds.com. So if you go to SBRodds.com, you can see all these lines changing in real time. You can see what the totals are. So Atlanta is on the road after a relatively hard-fought battle against the Los Angeles Rams. They got the victory in Los Angeles, but they're on the road. They travel out to the West Coast. Now they come back to the East Coast. They're outdoors in Philadelphia, who's had the week off. We'll discuss whether or not all those things will play a factor, but Atlanta still the favorite going into this one because without Carson Wentz, the Philadelphia Eagles get a big hit. Total here started at 44. It's come down pretty dramatically to 41 across the board, except for I'm seeing 141.5 over at Bovada. Again, SBRodds.com. Links right below us. But Atlanta, anywhere from a 2.5 to a 3-point favorite. Joe, you're up first on this one. How do you see this one
You're
going?
out for 2 weeks. You forget how this goes. You tee me up, and then I give some news and notes about the thing, and then we move on. I mean, you're gone for 2 weeks. You forget how this whole program functions here.
Dave, remember, it's Matt, Joe, Matt, Dave, Matt, and then more Matt, and then a little
I'm
bit
sorry,
more Matt.
I forgot
This
that Matt
guy
can't
is
call an
like
audible.
this
He's just going to run his route no matter what.
Holy mackerel!
All
this
right,
guy is,
Matt. What are the notes?
Yeah, listen, look.
Good Lord.
Listen, don't freak out. You're going to look. You're going to see that Julio Jones isn't practicing for the Atlanta Falcons. This is just basically what they've done with him over the last few weeks. He's a veteran. He gets the veteran rest days. Don't worry about all that. He's going to play regardless. It doesn't matter. He is a bit nicked up, but he's going to play no matter what. Same thing, Devonta Freeman, Mohamed Sanu, both also kind of got that veteran rest day as well early in the week here. On the Eagles side of things, they are going to get corner Jalen Mills back. I don't know how great that is for them. Jalen Mills, I know very, very well, former LSU guy, not so good at the coverage. So I don't know if that's the greatest thing for Philadelphia there, but it looks like they will have Jalen Mills back this week.
Thank you, Matt. Joe, over to you.
All right, two ways to go with this game, in my opinion. Number one, let's start with the pro Philadelphia side. Catching 3 points, or we're going to get close to 3 points at home in this game. That's got me kind of excited to play Philadelphia, because it's not as if Nick Foles is devoid of A, quarterback experience, and B, playoff experience. If you remember, under Chip Kelly, this guy did host a home playoff game against the New Orleans Saints just a few years ago. You've had 2 weeks to get ready for this game. You had an idea of who would be coming in to play you. You don't want to let the entire season go to hell in a handbasket this quickly. And if you look at Atlanta, you had to play hard in week 17 against the Carolina Panthers to get in. Then you had to travel on the short week all the way to Los Angeles and play on a Saturday, beat the Rams. Now you've got to go up to Philadelphia, play outdoors again. It's going to be cold. It's going to be windy. There are some elements here to like about Philadelphia. I'm not so concerned about Nick Foles. I think he can step up in this spot. What concerns me is Doug Peterson. How will Doug Peterson handle the bright lights and the big stage of the playoffs? Because this is an Andy Reid disciple. And Andy Reid is known for crapping the bed in the playoffs. We've seen other inexperienced coaches like Sean McVay go out in the playoffs and look overwhelmed. That's my biggest concern. How is Peterson going to call this game? Because I like the Eagles plus the points at the moment. Given the Atlanta situation, I'm not sure if I can rally behind Doug Peterson right now, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, listen, let's try to figure out how this game is going to play out. And you mentioned the cold and you mentioned the outdoors. That being said, you know, it's been a hot minute, but Matt Ryan's a Boston College guy. I mean, he played a lot of college.
He's from suburban Philadelphia, too.
Yeah,
this is a homecoming game.
Yes, I mean, this is certainly not one of those things where the guy's totally foreign to playing, you know, in these type of conditions or anything like that. But, you know, you look at this game, and one of the things that I really like, and that Joe, you and I have beaten the Falcons up all year long about, was their misuse of their players and how they were going about basically calling this offense. Sarkisian here over the last few weeks, whatever it might have been. Maybe he read an article or two. Maybe he listened to us sitting there talking about this guy, but finally started to use these guys, these weapons. Julio Jones is finally getting targets in the red zone. They're finally looking at him in clutch spots here. They're using the running backs out of the backfield, like we were wondering why they just keep pounding these guys up the middle. And now they're actually, you know, using them out of the both of the guys in the pass game and everything. So the offense is much more dynamic over the last month than it's been. It's certainly much more than it was at the beginning of the season here. And then you look at the Philadelphia side of things. And for me, I have a hard time wondering where the points are going to come from. When you look at Philadelphia, Atlanta defense has also stepped up pretty well. If you want to think that Philadelphia is going to be able to move the ball through the air at will against Atlanta, I mean, we just saw the Los Angeles Rams, who was one of the highest scoring teams in the league, one of the most potent offenses in the entire league. You know, yeah, I mean, Robert Woods had a decent day, but you know, they held Jared Goff about 250 yards, which is, you know, he didn't go ham or anything like that. For me, it's hard when I can get this for under a field goal. For me to rationalize, you know, taking less than a field goal with Philadelphia when I don't understand how they're going to get that field goal to keep it within the point spread. Joe, what is the most likely scenario of this game playing out? I mean, Philadelphia running the ball. I mean, what with LeGarrette Blount? I mean, like, what are we going to see? Or Jay Ajayi is going to all of a sudden
Jay Ajayi, Corey Clement, LeGarrette Blount, like you said, you'd figure you'd want to lean on the running game to take some of the pressure off of Nick Foles early. Maybe you're thinking about a first half under here.
Todd Gurley had 100 yards. You know, I mean, he did have 100 yards rushing in this game.
Yeah, but Todd Gurley is Todd Gurley, right? So I mean, Jay Ajayi is not Todd Gurley, and I mean the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, they may think, hey, let's get the running game going, but Atlanta pretty effectively stacked the box against arguably one of the best backs in the league in Todd Gurley, and they shut him down fairly effectively. Let's say that they do that again and they force what you would assume that they would do, right? Like force Nick Foles to try to beat you through the air, because if there's a weak spot on this Philadelphia team, that would be it. Is Nick Foles now, because he's not Carson Wentz. And even though, like Joe mentioned, he's got some playoff experience, you got to think that's got to be the game plan. Conversely, you look at Philadelphia's defense and you go, look, on paper, this defense is really good. They're good against the run. They're 21st against the pass. Like, Philadelphia's pass defense is not good. So even if they're able to shut down Devontae Freeman, how are you going to stop Julio Jones? And Matt Ryan is in my opinion, one of the better playoff quarterbacks that steps up into the pocket, isn't afraid to take a hit, and doesn't get rattled in big game situations, whereas I think Nick Foles absolutely could in this spot.
There's going to be some money to be made on the total here if you can answer the following question.
Well,
Are we going... Go ahead.
To prove your point, I mean, like it opened here around 43, 44 and already down to 41. So, I mean, there's definitely people who are looking in the same direction you are.
Has Jim Schwartz figured it out, though? You saw this defense late in the year. Forget about those last two games. The Dallas game, they packed it in, and the Raider game, the weather was a mess. No one could throw the football. If the weather's moderate enough to play football and throw the ball this weekend, I see it moving down. I think Philadelphia could find their way in, but is Atlanta going to tear apart this defense? Because we saw these guys get lit up late in the year. And if they didn't make the necessary corrections coming into this game, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are going to blow them apart.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing from Philadelphia is, you're going to have Desmond Trufant covering. I mean, most likely Alshon Jeffrey, I would assume you're going to go there. It's I don't know. For me, it's hard for me to find Philadelphia having enough success, I guess, to get this done. Of course, Joe, we talk about this all the time, and it's too early in the week for us to look at this now, but in Philly, the weather's always going to be a big thing. It's always going to be a concern. Even as we sit at 41 right now, this is one of those things where you start looking pretty hard on Saturday night, and definitely Sunday morning. If we see a really, really bad conditions there, we're leaning the under anyway. If we can get the weather working for us as well, this is going to be a huge underplay for us, right?
And just bump that back a bit. You mean Friday morning into Saturday morning. Friday night into Saturday morning. Right. Yeah. No, you're exactly right, though. It's something that's worth monitoring because you might be able to beat the final move by a couple points come Saturday at kickoff.
I mean, you hear these things of, and we saw this a few weeks ago that you and I were texting back and forth and we were able to jump on it. But, we get these reports from the beat writers that they're standing on the field and there's gusts of winds up to 27 miles an hour, right? And there's steady winds at like 19 miles an hour. That affects a pass game bigly. So let me tell you, like that affects a pass game bigly. So if that's the case, certainly something to monitor, and be sure and be all over that, guys, because that's something you can get an edge at really, really quick. They're not going to be able to adjust the line in time for you not to take advantage of that.
All right, the other Saturday game is Tennessee at New England, and Tennessee managed to figure out how to eke by Kansas City, and whether or not that was because Tennessee, rallied and they were able to put together the right game plan in the second half, or because Andy Reid just totally blew it, or maybe a combination thereof. Doesn't really matter. They're in this spot. They're going up against New England. New England nice and rested up at home, obviously. Tons of experience here. Tennessee, not so much, and this is reflective in this spread. So 13.5 is where it starts. It's actually come down to 13 in some spots. Bovada has it up at 14, still 13.5 in a couple of other places. Again, SBRodds.com to see all these odds changing in real time. Links right below us. Total here is 47. News and notes on this one, Matt.
Yeah, DeMarco Murray is still not practicing for the Titans, but do they really need him?
With the Titans, right? Yeah.
But I mean, do they really need him? Whenever you look at how Derrick Henry played this past week, they finally fed him for the first. It only took them until the first week of the playoffs to figure out that he's their best running back.
18 short weeks, man.
Yeah, for them to figure out he's their best running back, and they finally fed him, and he went off there. Corner Logan Ryan, one of their starting corners, actually questionable with an ankle injury, so something to monitor there on the Titans side. Not that you're really going to change how you view this game, I don't think. On the Patriots side, they should have Rex Burkhead back. They should have Chris Hogan healthy now, so they only get more potent. James White should be back healthy as well with the time off. They're really the only guy that's questionable kind of going in this is linebacker Kyle Van Noy, the only guy that's questionable, but they think he's going to be able to play as well. So the Patriots come into this on well-rested, definitely knowing one of the two teams they were going to play. So they were able to scout how this was going to go out. I mean, the spread basically shows it, but this seems like a chance for a bloodbath here, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, look, here's the thing is that, Marcus Mariota throws a touchdown pass to himself. There were some weird ways that they ended up getting that win in Kansas City this past weekend, but Tennessee ended up winning that game. 13 points is still a whole lot of points. The Patriots have been covering a lot of these big spreads throughout the season, though. Do you feel comfortable laying 13 and a half, even 14 in some places on New England in a playoff game where you know that Tennessee is going to bring everything, including the kitchen sink?
The Patriots cover spreads. They cover spreads in the playoffs. They cover spreads at home. They are one of the all-time greats over the last decade, but even specifically into recent memory, I think they're 6-1 against the number over their last 7 playoff games. Now, given everything that happened with that ESPN article last week, people think they might be torn apart.
The breakup narrative. Let's play in. Yeah, the breakup narrative.
You got to bring this into account. You got to wonder if there's going to be division behind the scenes, or if this is going to be that us against the world rallying cry. ESPN's trying to bring us down. We're going to take these guys out. Weather obviously is a concern, because if it's going to cut into Brady's ability to throw the ball down the field, that is going to hurt if you're going to try to cover a huge spread such as this magnitude. Now, here's the one reason I kind of look at Tennessee and think to myself, if I can get 14, maybe I play it. New England ranked, I think, 20th this season in run defense. They were giving up 4.7 yards per carry. That is second worst in the National Football League, behind only the Chargers. When teams run on the Patriots, they run with a lot of success. And if there's one thing Tennessee's shown us in the playoffs and late in the season that they've had some success doing, it's been running the football. Can they turn around from that physical affair with Jacksonville 2 weeks ago, and then the outdoor cold road game in Kansas City, and go up to New England and keep it close one more time? Because what worries me is if you fall down early to the Patriots, Derrick Henry becomes a non-factor. So How does the first quarter of this game play out? If New England jumps all over Tennessee, forget about it. It's going to be a blowout. If Tennessee can withstand the initial onslaught that the Patriots are going to give them through the first 30 minutes, they're going to cover this spread late. So that's the question for me, Matt. How is the first 15 minutes of this game going to play out?
Yeah, because here's the thing is the Chiefs the Chiefs allowed Derrick Henry to get back into that game because they played so ridiculous in that. That is not going to happen with a Bill Belichick coach team. If this team is up 21-3 at halftime, you better believe we're going to see a healthy rotation of those 4 running backs that they've got. Is going to be short, high percentage passes to keep the clock running. It's not going to be anything like we saw in Kansas City. Mind-boggling still to this day that we watched that happen. Yeah, I mean, listen, you're going to have a healthy 4-man rotation at running back. I mean, well, 3-man rotation. Gillislee will be a scratch. So you got healthy.
Remember him back in week 1 against the Chiefs?
Yeah, and then he came back.
Oh, Mike Gillislee.
Yeah, I mean, three touchdowns first 2 weeks and all the things like that. I mean, that's just the way it goes, right? With Belichick, it's like, oh, thanks for that. Now you're going to sit on the sideline and be a healthy scratch for the entire.
You guys remember Jonah Gray from last year? 4 touchdowns. Oh my God, he's on a waiver wire. I can't wait to pick him up. Where'd he go?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing here. But listen, okay, we always try to talk about this, how this game flow might go and paths to victory. Paths to victory here, because you know that this Titans team is not going to be able to stop this Patriots team from scoring. Therefore, the only path to victory is they're going to have the Titans are going to have success through the air. Can Marcus Mariota have success through the air against a Bill Belichick coach team that's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, whatever? Absolutely not. He didn't have success against anybody all year long. I mean, literally that freak touchdown pass to himself just weirdly changed the whole tide of that game and somehow got it back on track for them that he threw a touchdown pass to himself. But it was a bad throw that he got bailed out. It would have been 4th down. They'd had to kick a field goal, and then who knows how that game ends up turning out. But for me, path to victory, absolutely not there. At 13, I'm fine. Like you said, Joe, at 14, it's kind of like 2 full touchdowns. Not really, but you can still get that 13 number out there right now, and it seems very, very appealing to me. The Patriots are going to come. It's going to be a beatdown.
All right, moving on to the Sunday games, Jacksonville and Pittsburgh. Jacksonville and their offense just looked anemic, right, Matt, against the Buffalo Bills. They just looked terrible. Blake Bortles rushed for more yards than he threw, and it's not like we're talking about a Russell Wilson day here where, he threw for 187 yards and then outrushed that. No, we're talking about less than 100 on both sides. So pretty pathetic performance from Blake Bortles and that offense altogether. They're traveling to Pittsburgh, same situation here where, they're coming off the win at home over Buffalo, but now they have to go to Pittsburgh, and they're in a spot where Pittsburgh is rested up. Pittsburgh traditionally, at least throughout the course of this season, and just throughout history really, has played better at home. 7.5 point favorites is where we're seeing Pittsburgh right now. Total 41, 40.5, 40, depending on where you look right now. So Again, SBRodds.com, all of the links right below us. But, Matt, what do you say on this one? What do we need to know as far as injuries go?
Yeah, on the Jag side, linebacker Paul Posluszny left with a Posluszny? Come on, Joe. Help me out here.
Penn State.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Just insulting on your behalf to get that wrong.
Posluszny. Yeah, there we go. He left the game with a hip injury. Very, very questionable for the Jags in this one. They did get their top receiver, Marquise Lee, back, but he was held without a catch. And that happens whenever your quarterback only throws for 87 yards. So
he
that
was
is
talking trash all game, though.
Yes.
He had no problem talking trash to everybody.
Yeah, despite the fact he didn't have a catch and his quarterback only threw for 87 yards. On the Steelers side, obviously all eyes are going to be on Antonio Brown here. This is the quote from Mike Tomlin, the hot off the press as of this taping. It was a great week for Antonio. We practiced yesterday. He was a full participant at practice. We're excited for where he is. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor his participation throughout the week and really gauge his availability based on that. But that is the quote we have from Mike Tomlin. Listen, I think we can basically agree here in some way, shape, or form, you're going to see Antonio Brown out on the field. Now, whether that's as a decoy or whether that's actually as a full participant and actually part of the game plan, that's yet to be determined. But it's not, I don't think we're going to wake up, Joe, on Sunday and he's going to be a scratch.
Joe, let me ask you this. Let me lead you with this question. So we saw the Buffalo Bills effectively shut down Leonard Fournette. And, you think about the offense of Jacksonville, and clearly their defense is amazing, especially their secondary. It's unbelievable. But that offense has to run through Leonard Fournette because Blake Bortles is just not to be trusted. Buffalo was able to shut down Leonard Fournette. Can Pittsburgh do the same thing?
Absolutely. And I think that's got to be the game plan on the Pittsburgh side of the ball. You have to go into this game saying, and we've talked about this for weeks now on this show, that you're going to sell out against Leonard Fournette. And your theory is going to be, Blake Bortles has to beat us in order for us to lose this game. We're going to force you to beat us because we're not going to give up 170 yards on the ground to Fournette and let him run wild while we're trying to defend this ghost of a quarterback in Blake Bortles. So can Bortles pull that off? And even if he does pull that off, is it still going to be enough to get past Roethlisberger and the Steelers? I would say no. The question is, can you cover more than 7 going up against the league's elite defense? It was very telling early and often in that Buffalo game that while they only generated 3 points of offense, they were taking the San Francisco game plan and they were trying to throw it right back in Jacksonville's face. A lot of play action, a lot of bootleg, get Taylor out on the perimeter and give him a lot of RPO run pass options and work his progressions from deep down the field all the way up into the flat. The problem is that Buffalo has no wide receivers. Even if they had an opportunity to get the ball, they couldn't hold on to it. Pittsburgh, even down Antonio Brown, still has playmakers who can catch the ball. But here's where I get concerned. Is Todd Haley going to implement this approach? Remember, the Pittsburgh offensive coordinator very quietly got messed up in some bar fight where he shattered his pelvis. Now, the Steelers have cleared him of any wrongdoing. He was probably just an innocent bystander here.
Defending the honor of his wife, right?
His wife got into a bar fight on New Year's Eve, and somehow he got mixed up, and that's what happens when you're tough, but you're old. You get pushed down and your hip shatters.
Right. Dang. And I mean, and what do we make of this? Because I don't think there's enough being talked about. This is the guy who's tasked with coming up with a game plan to defeat the league's top defense. The last time you faced these guys, it was at Heinz Field, and your quarterback threw 5 interceptions in a game many thought was the end of his illustrious Hall of Fame career. So is Haley even ready to game plan for this? Because if he's not going to implement Kyle Shanahan's theories that were used a few weeks ago in Santa Clara, Pittsburgh's going to struggle to move the ball up and down the field despite all the weapons.
Yeah, fortunately, it's been, it'll be 2 weeks by that point. Had they had to play last week and deal with all that nonsense, maybe it would have become a factor. I think we're going to be okay with that. Dave, you referenced it. I mean, sans the game that Joe just mentioned, Ben Roethlisberger's home road splits are just astronomical. I mean, he plays so much better at home than he does on the road. Antonio Brown, obviously a huge part of that. If he is not able to be at 100%, well, he's definitely not going to be at 100%. If he's not able to be effective in this game, that can certainly, look at how Ben Roethlisberger is going to perform here. However, you watch that game from last week against the Jaguars here. You have Shady McCoy in this game who was playing at 75% tops, and he was able to have moderate success against this Jaguars defense. If there is a hole in this Jaguars defense, it's defending guys that are like that, the dynamic back that not only can rush the ball, but can catch the ball out of the backfield. Who is a better version of even 100% Shady McCoy? Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is the better version of LaShawn McCoy here. I cannot imagine them getting too cute here. I think this is a game where it's pretty cut and dry. You look at it and how do you win this game? We're going to feed Le'Veon Bell. And this is the one thing you mentioned about the Steeler team, though, Joe. They are not afraid to give Le'Veon Bell 30-plus touches. I mean, they have done it time and time again, and they will continue to do it. And I expect to see 30-plus touches in this game. I expect shorter passes, take advantage of the slot where you don't have to deal with those big-time outside corners there, and Ramsey and Bouye use the middle of the field. I think this is a pretty solid, and I hate to, give you this big workup here to say that this is a teaser special here, but listen, it's a little bit over a touchdown. Being able to pull it down through those two numbers to me seems like a good teaser special for me here, Joe. I don't mind kind of like the teaser and the under here, right? The Pittsburgh side and the under here. Going to be real tough for Jacksonville to score. I think you're going to see basically exactly what the Bills did from the Pittsburgh side here. Leonard Fournette was held under 3 yards a carry in that game because, like y'all mentioned, Blake Bortles, beat us, my friend. Beat us. If you can beat us, go ahead and beat us. And he proved that he can.
And moving on to our final game of the weekend and perhaps the best game on the slate, New Orleans traveling to Minnesota. I've said this to a couple of friends throughout the course of this week. I think whoever wins this game is going to win the Super Bowl. New Orleans is traveling to Minneapolis to take on the Vikings, and Minnesota opens as a 3.5-point favorite. Now they're 4-point favorites. Total here has actually gone up a tick, so from 44.5 to 45.5. What do you say, Matt?
On the Saints side, I mean, look, this is what we talked about at the top of the show. They were held to 41 yards rushing, 23 by Alvin Kamara, 21 by Mark Ingram. But then you go to Drew Brees, and he threw for 376. Michael Thomas had 131, and Ted Ginn had 115. It just shows you how dynamic this offense can be. If one thing's not working, they can actually literally hit a switch on the other side of things and get things going. This is something we kind of alluded to on this show several times throughout the deal, that it wasn't that necessarily they didn't have the pass game of years past. It was just that the two backs were so good. What's the point? They didn't have to go to that. They didn't have to utilize Drew Brees throwing for 376 yards because it was working with the two backs here. One big note here, though, left guard Andrus Peat broke his leg in that game, is going to be out for the Saints, obviously, with a broken leg there. On the Vikings side, they're going to get their starting center, Pat Eflin, back, so that's pretty big for them. You look back at week one here, obviously these two teams played completely different dynamics of these teams here. Week one, Sam Bradford was the quarterback of the Vikings. He threw for 3 touchdowns and 346 yards against a defense that had really not come around. You also had Dalvin Cook, who is no longer with the Vikings as well, rush for 127 yards against this team. So two completely different teams going at it this week. Alvin Kamara had not yet established there for the Saints. Obviously, the Saints defense was in shambles those first few games of the season. So really, you look back at that first game, not a lot to draw from that first match to look at whenever we look at this game.
So, Joe, we were talking earlier about how Carolina, in my opinion, did exactly the wrong thing. Like, they shut down the run very effectively against the Saints, and you have to do that with Kamara and Ingram. But then they left their pass game wide open, and that's where
they don't
Carolina
have anyone that can cover, though. I mean, they don't have anyone that can cover. So
that's what I mean. It's like that's where they're susceptible. So, but Minnesota is a different bag of tricks, right? So Minnesota is very tough up front, and then in the secondary, are you going to see Thomas getting those big plays, or is Xavier Rhodes going to continue with that Rhodes close sort of mentality, where he has become a true shutdown corner in the NFL? Will he be able to stop the passing game of Drew Brees, who does have a very strong history of spreading the ball across the field? Even if wide receiver 1 has been eliminated from the game, Drew Brees can figure out where else to put it. The question is, can he do that against this really strong Minnesota defense? This is a fascinating battle, a chess game, if you will, between these two teams.
The question comes down to whether or not Case Keenum is able to handle the bright lights and the big stage of the NFL playoffs. All year long, people have doubted him. His own coaching staff's doubted him. He's a guy that's headed for free agency. I mean, a guy who quarterbacked the number 2 seed in the NFC has a contract that's about to expire. And the rumor is that he and Pat Shurmur, the offensive coordinator, are going to leave together to possibly take one of the open vacancies somewhere. That's insane. Keenum's had a great year, but there's no talk whatsoever of whether or not he's going to be back with the club. So
second highest QBR, rounding out the 2017 season in the entire NFL, only behind Carson Wentz, ahead of the Tom Brady's and Drew Brees of the world.
Yeah, it shows you.
It's insane.
It's everything you need to know about Minnesota. They don't love the guy. So is he going to come into this game playing with the chip on his shoulder? Is he going to come in the game realizing all eyes are on him, and if he wants the big payday, he needs to perform? That's the only thing I need to get over in this game, because for the rest of it, I don't really trust the Saints. I think this is where they crap out on the dice table. They're banged up. There's a lot of crowd noise they're going to have to deal with. As good of a football team as they are, this point spread, it tells me everything I need to know. The Saints have the marquee quarterback. They're coming off that primetime win over Carolina. Everyone saw it. I would figure that this would be the game where the public would say, hey, I like to bet underdogs. I really like having Drew Brees plus 4 points in my pocket. Why is Drew Brees getting 4 points? I think this is the books trying to bait you into New Orleans a little bit here so that Minnesota comes back and hammers them. The Saints have played great defense this year, but I think they're going to struggle in this spot. And here's the one thing about the Vikings that doesn't get nearly enough credit. They have covered 42 of their last 59 point spreads. No gimmicks, no angles, no trends in terms of Saturdays or late kickoffs. 59 games. The last 59 games, they have covered 42 point spreads. That is 71%. They're extremely well coached. They're healthy. They're getting ready to roll at the right time. You got to figure they look at Philadelphia and think they're vulnerable. You have a chance to host the Super Bowl in your home city, and I'm hoping that 2 years ago, that crap job against the Seattle Seahawks when they tanked at home in that game at the University of Minnesota serves as like this rallying cry for this team. Like they're not going to let that happen again.
It's revenge for Bountygate from 2009 as well. The Saints are rolling back into town. Sean Payton is still there. I mean, it's a totally different squad, obviously. Brett Favre is not still under center for Minnesota, but don't think the Vikings and their fans have forgotten about that.
How many guys are probably still around from that? Breeze and anyone else?
Breeze, Sean Payton, and
Brett Favre's doing a Wrangler commercial somewhere.
Extra crotch room, man. What do you say, Matt?
Yeah, it's got the U shape. They say.
Yeah.
The
extra room.
It's
like Brett. We saw those pictures, man. You don't really need the extra.
The U shape. So this is going to be very interesting to see how the Saints deploy their secondary here. Are they going to choose to shadow one of the receivers with Marshawn Lattimore, or are they just going to play straight up and basically say, listen, we've got two really good corners here, and it doesn't matter who lines up against them. That's how we're going to play this. You talked about a chess match, Dave. Like this one, I'll just go ahead and spoil this. This game's a stay away for me as far as betting. I think the line is fairly right on with this. It wouldn't surprise me if New Orleans wins this game by 2 touchdowns. It wouldn't surprise me if Minnesota won this game by 2 touchdowns with the way this is going to play out. Look, we always talk about Drew Brees on the road, this, that, and the other. Well, this is on the road, but it's in a dome. Obviously, they're used to playing in a dome. They're used to playing. It's loud in the Superdome, just as loud as it's going to be up there in Minnesota. I don't think this is, and it's Drew Brees for crying out loud. None of that's going to get to Drew Brees. How's this going to affect the other guys on the team? Michael Thomas, only a second-year guy. Alvin Kamara, rookie. How's that going to affect those type of guys? Now, that's where we need to worry about this situation here. Dave, I think it's pretty straightforward on the Minnesota side of things. Xavier Rhodes going to shadow Michael Thomas.
Shut him down.
Yep. He's going to shadow him. One of the things, though, about this is one of the reasons that Xavier Rhodes has been so effective on a lot of these guys, and he's so much bigger than a lot of guys. He's a huge corner in this league. Well, he doesn't really have a size advantage when it comes to Michael Thomas here.
He also shut down Julio Jones. He doesn't have a size advantage on Julio.
Yeah, Julio. Dare I say Julio's lost a step, but we'll
what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Dare I say
1 minute ago you said you had no lean on this game, then you come in with the hottest take of the day.
Dare I say Julio's lost a step. Anywho, so it's pretty straightforward on the Minnesota side of things. That being said, where are the points coming from on the Minnesota side of ball? Like we like to walk through these games and we like to figure out how the likeliest scenario here. So Case Keenum, we assume we're going to have Marshawn Lattimore and we're going to have King Crawley, and they're going to be on, one of the two the big receivers.
Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Sure.
So are we going to have a situation where Minnesota is going to be able to beat the New Orleans Saints via Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon? Is that something that we think is a likely scenario here?
Well, sure. I mean, so it's not just those guys, though. It's similar to what I was talking about earlier with Drew Brees, where let's say that Thomas is shut down by Xavier Rhodes and he's out of the game. Lattimore, let's say that he shuts down Stephon Diggs. I mean, Adam Thielen has become a factor for the Minnesota Vikings. Treadwell, Kyle Rudolph, like all of the
You just mentioned Laquan. He's got like 5 catches the whole year, Laquan Treadwell. Come on, get out of here with that nonsense.
This is his day. This is his day.
The point is that Case Keenum spreads the ball around the field. It's not just like a Matt Ryan going to his number 1 receiver, and then if he's not available, going to Mohamed Sanu. It's not that sort of situation at all. They've been doing a nice job, in my opinion, of spreading it around offensively. But Minnesota's strength, let's not get things crossed, is on defense in this game.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, all I'm saying here is like box scores can be misleading too, because you look back and you're saying like, why are you hyping up these corners from New Orleans? Cam Newton threw for 200 and whatever it was or something like that. But
Lattimore is elite. There's no two ways about it.
100 of that went to the back in McCaffrey. Another 100 of that went to Greg Olsen, the tight end. So like 200 of the yards that Cam Newton threw for weren't to wide receivers. So I mean, like this is the corners for the Saints are lockdown corner. They're very, very, very good. So they're going to have to beat them with Kyle Rudolph. They're going to have to beat them with Jerick McKinnon. They're going to have to beat them with Latavius Murray. Is that going to be enough? That's the question for me. I can't buy into that. I don't like the number.
Latavius Murray's been looking pretty good recently, man. I don't know if you've been watching the Minnesota games or not, but Latavius Murray has come on pretty well.
Joe has an opinion on Latavius Murray. Come on.
Well, Latavius Murray last year in Oakland was a much different, and even at the beginning of the season, like it took him a while to warm up, but Latavius Murray's been snapping off some pretty big runs and running like a power back.
Latavius Murray's looking back at the Raiders like double barreling it this season. Like, hope you guys are enjoying Marshawn Lynch and all the greatness that came with this season. I'm heading for the NFC Championship game, son.
So look, let's getting back to here. So 45 and a halves are out there. Yep. It's the last game of the week. Typically last game of the week. You're also going to see New Orleans, whatever. You expect this number to tick up at least a half point, maybe even a whole point. We're looking at 46 and a half, something like that as far as the total goes. That, I guess my initial lean, if I'm going to play this game, like I'm a pass on the side here, but like I lean to the under yet again. I mean, I just don't see a ton of firepower in this one when it all comes down to it. I mean,
there's tons of firepower on both offenses, right? We just went through that, but these defenses are so good that it could be one of these weird stalemate, like 13-17 game going into the fourth quarter, because the defenses are good and Case Keenum may get rattled on the Minnesota side.
Yeah, I mean, look, if let's say that Xavier Rhodes is able to take Michael Thomas out of the game. Do we think that Ted Ginn and Brandon Coleman and Willie Snead are going to be enough to get it done on the New Orleans side of the ball through the air? Probably not. I bet we end up seeing Alvin Kamara line up in the slot a lot in this game. I bet you they try to make mismatches with him and some of these other guys on the Viking side of the ball. I bet we see a ton of that. Joe, 46 and a half. Are you taking the over the under in that? A gun to your head.
I don't like it. I'd go over.
Really?
Go over. If I had to. Now I'm not, when we do best bets in a few seconds here, I'm not going to be using this game or that pick as a best bet. But like you said, gun to my head, for some reason, I see the Saints doing enough to get their share of the points on the board. I'm not too worried about Minnesota putting theirs up. I think that this game's got a lot of surprise appeal to it.
Yeah, I honestly think that this game is going to come down to like one or two big mistakes, like a pick six or something like that. I think this game gets decided by special teams and defense, definitely. All right, so that's a tricky game, but it's a whole lot of fun. Can barely wait for it. Matt, you're a New Orleans guy. I'm a Minnesota guy. Let me know if you want to watch that one together.
Listen, let's be honest. I'm sitting here saying I'm passing on it. Like it depends.
You're not passing on it.
It depends on how the first, it depends on how the first couple of.
They'll have more on this than any other game.
Yeah, of course he will.
We'll see how it goes.
All right, here we go. Best bets of the week. Joe, you're up first on this one. What do you like best on this 4-game slate?
There's two I would play. Philadelphia right now, the opportunity to get 3 is out there. I'm wondering if 3 in the hook's going to come back. That's what I'm going to wait for, to see if any of these books tick up to 3.5, and then I'm going to play the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to give Doug Peterson the benefit of the doubt. I think Nick Foles and the Eagles are being undervalued for a couple reasons. We saw them lose 6-0 in the finale to Dallas, and then the game before that everyone was watching on Christmas against Oakland, they played pathetic football because of the weather. The wind was too high. It was an ugly game. No one's got any faith in the Eagles. I don't see the Eagles playing for the Super Bowl. I don't see the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. I do see them surprising people in this game solely because Atlanta has had a lot to get into the playoffs. Eventually, it's going to catch up to them. They had to grind late. They had to go to L.A. Now they got to go to Philadelphia. I think the Eagles with the surprise. Give me the 3.5. I think they win that game. I'll also lay the 4 with Minnesota in the nightcap. Something just 4 points. I think every square is going to want to play the Saints as their underdog pick. Like every now and again, the squares want to come in on an underdog. I think this is that game, and I think Minnesota handles them.
Listen, I'll lay the big wood with New England here. I understand it's a lot of points. It's 13 points, but what do we keep seeing from this New England team? They just come out and beat the hell out of everybody that they're supposed to beat the hell out of. And this Tennessee team, make no mistake, despite what we saw last week, is complete gutter trash. They're absolutely horrible. They are not going to be able to do anything against this New England team going up there into it. What might maybe a Weathers type situation as well, Joe. Bringing that into effect as well
You're going to fade Tennessee right to a Super Bowl championship. You're going to fade them every week, and they're going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
2 weeks in the build up to the Super Bowl. You're going to forget this Tennessee.
I will give you 100. I will give you 100 to 1 right now on any amount of money that you want to bet that is not the case, that they do not win the Super Bowl this year. Look,
I'll take $1 on that just for the hell of it.
We talk about.
Yeah, I'll take $1 on that. Please.
But look, we talk about Jacksonville and Bortles. I mean, seriously, almost the same thing could be said about Mariota in Tennessee. He's shown absolutely nothing as far as being able to get it done through the air when it comes down to it. I mean, listen, he made 2 good throws last week. I mean, you can't make 2 good throws and beat New England. That's just not going to happen. You can do that in Kansas City. You're not going to be able to do that in New England. I think this is a 13s, by the way. So that number might go away. If that number goes away, gets a little more dicey when it gets to 14. But there are 13s out there right now.
You know, we have some variety here. I actually, my favorite play of the week is taking Pittsburgh. Jacksonville's offense looked so bad against Buffalo, and Buffalo's defense was effective at shutting down Leonard Fournette, and they made Blake Bortles do everything. If Pittsburgh just does exactly that, and then you take that offense of Buffalo and swap it out for Pittsburgh's offense, they run the exact same game plan. And by the way, keep in mind, Pittsburgh playing at home now, nice and rested up. Jacksonville, Blake Bortles' whole issue is a confidence issue, right? Like, he just can't get out of his own way. You think that he's going to be more confident after that pathetic performance against the Bills that everyone saw on national TV? He's going to be more confident rolling into Pittsburgh, where by every account he should get eaten alive. 7.5, even 8 points. I think that Pittsburgh is going to smash Jacksonville. I know that they have got a fantastic pass defense, but their run defense is not elite like their pass defense is. Le'Veon Bell should shred these guys. If Big Ben just dinks and dunks it down the field, they should be able to walk all over this team. And Jacksonville's going to be 3 and out if they leave it up to Blake Bortles.
If we look at the box score and Le'Veon Bell has 35 touches in this game, then you're feeling pretty good.
City,
you're feeling pretty good about the way that game has gone for sure.
Well, look, really fun weekend, and we appreciate you joining us. SBRodds.com. All the links are right below us. If you want to go check out the lines, you can also see all of the different sports books where you can get the different prices. We always talk about the value of shopping around. You can see the ratings of these books. A lot of them have been around for a very long time, making a lot of customers very happy. Of course, if you want to get involved in everything is available. Teasers, no matter what you want. Parlays, everything right there. SBRodds.com. Links right below us. Make sure that you subscribe as well. Alongside Matt Brown and Joe Fortenbaugh, my name's Dave Farah. Thank you for watching and listening to the Play Action Podcast.